I started working in Element 3.5 years ago. My name's Brendan. I'm the AVP of Solutions Engineering, and it's kind of been a tradition now for me to MC or host one of the tracks, and did so fresh and new at Element 4 years ago, where we had our humble beginnings up at the rooftop of the AC Hotel in Raleigh. There were not three tracks. There were not wrapped hotels. It was just incredible content and incredible people coming together for what is in what you see today, which is Element 451. So incredible legacy that this company and artist already has. So I'm super excited to see everyone here and here for the first session. Anyone do karaoke last night? How are the voices? Anyone get sleep? No? No? Come on, if you didn't do karaoke last night, you got to do karaoke tonight. It's going to be a fun time, but you're in for a real treat with the session that we have today. So we have Dr. Winn and Dr. Bonilla. Dr. Winn, first up, is from Tambellini Group. He is their senior analyst. He's also a former university VP of IT, and honestly, he is able to predict trends of education and of technology in higher ed like none other. So you're in for a true treat with him. And Dr. JC Bonilla, he is a colleague and friend of mine. He has done so much in this space, especially with AI. He is our COO and head of AI at the company. So you all are in a real treat. They're going to be talking about what is next and revealing the trends in education. And let's go ahead and get them up on stage. So everyone, round of applause for Dr. Bonilla and Dr. Winn.
Hello, everybody. I feel like that was the biggest oversell ever. Predictions like no other.
Friend predictor. And definitely what numbers and teams should I buy today. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our first session. Just excited to see friendly, beautiful faces. I'm JC. And yes, all things Element here, joined by Matt Tambellini. And the conversation that I want to have today, it's on the good and the bad of this special secret sauce called AI. This idea of headwinds, tailwinds, and a bit of predictions. I want to start with this statement. You know, there's no AI experts. Like, no one is an expert in this field. It's people like us who are basically spending more time than the average. But the field is changing so fast. And in a way, this conversation that we're talking about, they're retrospective in nature. And anyone who comes and says tomorrow looks like XYZ, it's making deductions based on signals that we see. So today's conversation is about signals. Today's conversation is about data that we get, and we like to put it in 4 different places. So let's start with a bit of market headwinds. And in our prep conversation, obviously recorded, transcribed, and AI assistant, there's some taglines that caught my eye, and they come from the research that you do, Tambellini. And this one was very interesting, and in a way, humbling, right? 80% of us are under 2,500 students, and the budget to student ratio, the dollar to resources, is not on our favor, right? So schools, us, are struggling with the delivery of the promise, educational, administrative, academic, you have it. So I'd like to start with that quote, and through the lens of AI, what does that mean? Is it fine if the school is resource strapped? Where do you feel this being felt on campuses? Is it, my tech? Is it the people, the culture? There's multiple manifestations, but where do you think this is going to take place?
Yeah, well, I certainly think it shows up everywhere, right? And so there's really not one that is more prevalent than the other. But what I would say is, that culture kind of ends up being the proverbial canary in the coal mine, right? And so a lot of these institutions that are smaller historically have been so resource constrained that they sometimes have a harder time adapting to change, right? And to being innovative and to taking risks. And when that happens, sometimes, like, even if the technology is there, even if the technology is affordable and at their hands, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be fully utilized. And so
You saw data that
Yeah.
93% of features are not being used.
Oh, absolutely.
It's incredible, right?
And we see that in a lot of different ways, right? So, even outside of the CRM, just taking like your core administrative systems, right? Like a Colleague or a Banner or a Genzabar. So many of these systems, have been so heavily customized. And over the past 20 years, most institutions don't even realize that all the work that they've done to customize, now those systems have features that do it native within the product, right? But they just can't keep up with the pace of change and innovation. And we do a survey with a lot of institutions called the Future Campus survey. And we look at a lot of different factors, but we look at 10 different areas, and we look at it from a standpoint of business enablement or business outcomes and tech enablement. And what we find is there, in these 10 areas, there are a lot of institutions that have high tech enablement, but low business outcome. Meaning, right, that a lot of times there's this idea that we can kind of like buy our way out of the problems that we're facing. And so we kind of go, we buy the new technology and we implement it, but never really fully utilize it. And we're not getting the ROI, the financial ROI, the opportunity ROI, the efficiency ROI. We're not getting those things because the culture, again, right, isn't necessarily set up for change and experimentation and innovation to take place.
It's very interesting because the way I was trying to frame the question is, or statements of we have this need, we don't have the budget, so many of us will come and buy the tech because of the promise. But what you're saying is, it's not the tech budget, it's not the people, it's not the talent, it's all of them is going to come in at the same time in a way, right? And I guess, could I say this? From your data, if we make the commitment to buy the tech, it's just not that the tech is going to get us out of the hole.
That's right.
We have to go all in.
That's right.
Is that the message?
Absolutely. And so, training, right? It is a total culture shift, right? I think one of the things that holds us back, and I remember like when I first started as a CIO, I asked a lot of questions. Why do we do this? Why do we do this? Why do we do this? And I think everybody could fill in the answer, right? Because it's the way we've always done it, right? And there's this kind of inertia, right, in a negative way, this kind of like standing still that takes place that really holds institutions back from even leveraging what they have.
How many of you have done a digital transformation project in the last 12 months, last year? No CRM, no ERP, document management. Just raise your hand. Okay. What you're talking about kind of gets us into the other thing that we unpack, that change management is needed to bring AI. But everyone who's raised their hand, I bet you're pretty exhausted from that implementation of technology, right? Digital transformation ain't easy. You used the word digital transformation fatigue. And I just wonder if you could unpack that.
Yeah.
Because I oversee our client operations, and one of the things that I oversee is onboarding. We're very proud of our onboarding experience, and I always tell our clients, or our team actually, you're going to be doing implementation therapy, right? Because many of us have gone through these digital transformations, and they are chaotic. It's like trauma after deploying SIS, ERP, and whatnot. So
yeah,
digital transformation fatigue. Where is that coming from? Where are you seeing that in the data? And
yeah. I mean, we see it all over the place when we're talking to institutions, not only in preparing them for change, but just kind of interviewing them and talking through things. A lot of institutions have a lot of technology debt, right? And a lot of process debt, right? And, I would say going back 5 years to COVID, right, really accelerated the need for institutions to start some modernization.
that COVID?
Yeah, right. I mean, we're I don't know if we're out of it. Maybe we are, but it really exhausted a lot of institutions because, in a lot of cases, they were 7 to 10 years behind in technology. and they weren't really ready for a full remote experience. A lot of still paper registration, admissions processes, financial aid, whatever the case may be. And so this rapid change to be able to facilitate a lot of these things remotely really took a toll. And I think it was both overwhelming and underwhelming at the same time, right? It was overwhelming in the sense that there was just so much change that was needed, and underwhelming in the fact that so much change was needed to get you to just caught up, right? Or something that resembled being caught up, especially with technology being so ubiquitous in our daily lives. There's often this like disconnect and expectation about what we think technology should be able to do and maybe where the technology is at any particular time at our institution. And so when you are forced to modernize several processes and systems all within the span of a few years, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And in some cases, right, products are oversold in what they're capable of doing.
Never element.
Right? And never an element. But inevitably oversold in what they're capable of doing, right? And so there's sometimes this delta between what is promised and what the outcome is when it's actually implemented. And so it erodes trust a little bit, right? Because we work so hard to sell modernization, and then if it doesn't meet that expectation, then that next project is a little bit harder to kind of get on the bandwagon and undertake.
So a lot of empathy, I guess, from our side that this is real, right? Of course, we're all exhausted of doing this digital transformation, but I think the message that you're hearing with us and the other conversations is upon us. So we gotta get around it. And besides change management, which I preface with, some of you, digital fatigue in terms of transformation change management, some of you actually need to do 2 jumps. It'll be a compounding effect because you're still with servers on-prem. Who knows? You haven't done the cloud transformation, and then here's AI, so you may be taking 2 steps. But from a market headwinds, if I were to ask you this, is there a secret cow? Is there something that, you would say from everything you see that needs to be removed so that AI delivers on this promise? Because sure, we're tired, but we all are latched on the promise that it's difficult, the student needs it, we need it, the resources are constrained, and AI has this promise. So anything that needs to be, would you say, let's go first there for AI to have its path?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I give you one sacred cow. I probably could give you several, right? That probably
You're one.
need to change. I think mindset, this is the way we've always done it. That's a huge blocker, right? We find even today, even working with institutions that are modernizing systems, there's this propensity to do a lift and shift, right? And to take the processes they are today and use a new system to do the same thing, right? And 9 times out of 10, you are giving up opportunity, right, that you could have to improve the situation. I would say kind of another one, and this might conflict with something that we might talk about here in a little bit, but the golden era of institutions just being able to show up and exist and be successful is over, right? And so, sorry.
What does that mean? Say more.
So for a long time, right, I would say that many of us in this room, right, we were not necessarily kind of skeptical consumers, right? Higher education, getting the degree was something that we always just should do, and we did it. And so a lot of institutions just needed to exist, right? They kind of could live and die by the, like, if you build it, they will come. It was a reliable business model, right? We want to put this degree out. People will take the degree, right? Whether or not they use it, whether or not it's valuable, leads to a job, doesn't matter. And that era is over, right? Our students coming to us are a lot more intelligent and informed consumers. And I think kind of living by sort of academic preference, faculty preferences, and ignoring the data of what the industry needs is going to accelerate the failure of a lot of institutions.
Let's start painting this picture, which is a story of a that brought me back to campus. I spent 20 years at NYU, and it was so refreshing to hear this story. So I'm not going to read it, but what is this 20% the student calls versus 80% AI can do something?
Yeah, so
I think it's a great one.
when I was a CIO, I was working with our vice president who was over enrollment, and we were working through some financial aid challenges, namely the phone system, right? There was a growing frustration that a lot of calls seemed to be going unanswered. And so I had one of my AVPs go do just a report on financial aid and the phone system and the call system. And we found that we were missing 80% of the calls coming in were going unanswered. 80%, right? And you think about how
Any of the schools.
no, it's totally just us, right? But you think about, in the race to matriculate students, financial aid is so important. Getting that package correct, getting their questions answered, getting the aid to them.
Yeah.
A lot of times, the school that can do that the fastest and the best gets the student. And so for a enrollment-dependent institution to miss 80% of those crucial phone calls, I mean, that directly, ties to enrollment issues, right? And so, one of the things that we realized was, even at an institution where the human touch is so important, augmenting the human touch with an agent, right, was better than completely missing the call in the first place, right? And so I think that a lot of institutions are probably letting a lot of students slip through the cracks in the admissions process, the financial aid process, because they simply just don't have the labor to get everybody.
In that conversation we're going to have in a little bit, so I want to put a pin on this context of the student experience is changing, right? And there's going to be demands that will be different next year. Let's just assume that the 80% of the phone calls who are not being answered, the student still keeps up with it, right? And they'll call us again. I'm going to use a word very strategically. They will submit to our process, right? And they'll follow along. So where does AI come in here, right? So your point was, what I can do is I'll focus on 20% of the students and let AI take care of 80%. Like, where does this go? I mean, this is the reality, and we just keep on doing things similarly. Where does AI come here?
Right. I mean, I think there's different levels of interactions that need to take place. And there are certainly lower levels of interactions that can be extremely helpful for students and families that an agent can do, leaving the more, complex conversations and tasks to a human, or even starting the conversation and then getting the information to the human so that once that call is answered, it's a much more efficient call to take place, right? And so it's not that 80% can be replaced by AI, but it enhances what the humans can do when they have the opportunity to have those interactions and to focus on the ones that need a higher degree of assistance.
Where's Matt with all the Tambellini research standing on AI replaces work versus amplifies or whatnot? That divide of our jobs in AI work.
Yeah, I would say it definitely enhances and augments, and it's less about replacement, right? I think there's a lot of fear out there that AI is going to straight replace. I think the volume of work, especially at a conference like this, where we're mainly talking about admissions and student success and those types of things, the volume of work still supports the people that we have employed. Meaning that we can augment, right, and catch what's kind of falling through the cracks. And the other thing about it too, right, is there's kind of this idea that AI is going to replace people, and I just don't see that happening. We don't see that happening, right? We see it freeing people up to not only do their job more effectively and do what they need to do. Maybe it's that people get reallocated into other areas that are a little bit more high need. And at the end of the day too, there are a lot of institutions, we talk about these 2,500 and below. they just cannot attract the people that they need, right? So there are a lot of institutions that have the budget out there to hire people and cannot fill the spots. They cannot get people to apply to the positions, right? And so when you're in that situation where you can't even fill the spots that you're budgeted to fill, then AI really, there's an opportunity to augment that from that standpoint too.
Um, I've My opinion on this divide is that it's two stages. And then for those of you who listen to my podcast on generation AI or the element roadmap that you saw, the first wave, and I'm not going to put timelines. I don't know if it's a year or 2 years or 5 years. The first wave really looks amplification, and it's you becoming AI managers. But the second wave, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, I do think AI will look differently and our jobs change, so it's replacive. It's just that I think there's going to be a displacement of knowledge and we'll go somewhere else. So I think it's the two phases. For phase one, which is similar to yours, I am an AI manager. I'm managing a fleet of agents. What does that mean?
Yeah, I was talking to the CIO at Wake Forest recently, and just this realization and conversation from him of saying, wait, hang on a second, right? Like, I'm not just using AI, like an intern, but AI is really kind of becoming one of my employees. And you think about, agents managing other agents, right? It really is augmenting your workforce, and you're having to think in a sense of AI being, some of your actual high level employees that not only are doing high level work, but are managing other employees, right? In the sense of agents. And so it's a new kind of paradigm of even the digital workforce that we haven't had before.
Let me paint this picture. First, dramatic statement. None of us understand what it means to do our jobs through the lens of AI, right? This is a new chapter that all of us are co-editing and co-writing together. Because here's the example. We speak of AI as highly personalized, and I can give you a segment on one, an email for one. That's great. But then you'll say, let me have the agent who writes this email campaign for that one student. Amazing. That's just basically the domino zero of the impact that AI has. What you want to do, just to give you a picture, you want 100 agents to do one email for one student and have them simulate all the potential outcomes and have another agent come and tell you this is the best out of the 100 and that's the one email that went out. At the end of the day, it's highly personalized, but all the permutations of behavior and outcomes are modeled in a way you end up with a highly personalized email that has a higher probability of success given who Matt is or JC is and whatnot. That's basically what agent modeling will look like. I use this to kind of segue to a part that is very interesting for me to have this conversation. And this is a quote from our podcast. AI didn't break it. It exposed where it was already cracked. I don't know if you are here to this statement or not. So this is not your research. So blame artists and I. But we truly believe that we are making difference in students' lives and families. It's just that we're always trying to catch up. Higher education, from a technology point of view, has been in the catch-up mode. So what AI has done, it just basically made this gap, the equity gap that you've mentioned, even larger. So the story that I want to see to have this conversation, it's on the divide of it's AI exposing academic integrity, like students cheating, like this new reality. My bet is that in 2026, we're talking about 6 months from now, students are going to start showing up to your campus with 4 years of ChatGPT on their backs, right? Just think about a simple example. 5 years ago, students showed up with Uber experiences, so they don't need campus transportation. They Uber their way through campus. Today, they're going to have that experience multiplied times 10 as it relates to a newest campus experience. As an academic and faculty member, I really I'm rethinking assignments because I know they're going to cheat. More importantly, it's not about cheating. It's about, it took them 10 hours to code. Now I need to give them totally different assignments because it takes them a minute to code. So how do I teach? A lot of context to tell you from data, all the million observations that you have. What can you tell us about the student experience? 2026 is around the corner.
Yeah, it's completely different, right? And I think of it as an opportunity, not a threat. And I think I wish that more of academia saw it that way, as an opportunity and not a threat, right? Because we've been chasing down student cheating in a lot of different ways forever, right? And when I was a dean of online ed, there were so many conversations with faculty about, well, how do I prevent them from cheating on my test, right?
So you didn't know they're being resourceful.
And I said, well, don't make your test easy to cheat on, right? Because at the end of the day, we want to teach our students digital literacy, digital citizenship, how to be effective using technology. And it's this irony that, inside the classroom, if a student uses generative AI to do the work better and faster than they could have otherwise done, we penalize them and we say that they're cheaters. But they graduate and then they go into the workforce and they're rewarded as being innovative, right? And so there's this disconnect between what's happening at the institution, what's happening out in the real world. And really, I think it's an opportunity to revise the way that we do instructional design.
Right.
And basically look at it and say, okay, how do we switch sides on this? And how do we leverage what students are coming to our campus with the ability to do to go further, right? And to teach them how to do it effectively, how to do it responsibly. And I think part of the problem is faculty they're from a different era. And, I'll say this, I was a full-time faculty member and a dean. We teach in the way that we were taught. And so it's very difficult and it takes a lot of effort.
Perfect, flawless.
Yeah, right. It takes a lot of effort to go outside of that paradigm. And unless faculty and institutions are training our faculty and staff on how to do this effectively and how to be, digitally literate, then it's the blind leading the blind, right?
I'm assuming that 99% of us are not on the teaching, academic, supportive side of the house. We are in the service engine side of the house, admissions, recruitment. So, and what I love to shift the conversation is a word that I really liked what you said, human touch 2.0, right? What this expands is the idea that, look, the secret sauce that we have as administrators is that when we had the time, we can really guide a student through admissions, student success, academic affairs in a nuanced way because we're educators. So if we linked this student experience, what students are probably expanding with us, technology, sure, faculty is going to be changing, but what about us, the service engine? What do you think this human touch 2.0 looks like as AI meets administration?
Well, I think for one hand, right, we're able to gather more information about the student to have ready to be able to have those conversations, to understand more about, that other 80%, right, of the student.
Yeah.
But, human empathy isn't scalable, right? Human empathy takes a lot of emotion and time and effort and listening. And those are things that the technology is not going to be able to do, right? But all that time that we need to be really good humans and to really understand our students and care for them and have empathy, we don't have that time because of all the other things that are taking our time, right? And so not only can it prepare us for those conversations by giving us the information that we need that we wouldn't necessarily have otherwise, but it gives us the bandwidth to be able to increase empathy, right? And increase, the human experience so that it's that much better.
There's one thing that in my years of experience of dabbling what we do with technology is that we humans are the best at what we do, being humans. And technology, what is best at? in technology, right? And this duality of the human and the technology is starting to come, and we'll see what it looks like in 20 years from now. But my take in some of these conversations that we're having is the empathy aspect, the humanity aspect now gets even a double down. And we just need to be understanding what that looks like and what are the tools that allows us basically double down on those attributes. So I'd love to have a conversation about doing this responsible, but also Trey on the back has a microphone. So as we have this conversation, is any questions on these parts? I'd love to have if there's a question, we'll take it. If not, we'll start talking about how do we start moving in and any data that you see on doing responsible acceleration of our campuses. Are there any questions? Anyone would like to name where you're coming from? And a really, really difficult question for Matt.
So I just wanted to ask, because I know at my big age, if I call somewhere, I don't want to talk to AI. I don't want to talk to a bot. I want to talk to a person. However, again, at my big age, I'm not in Gen Z, obviously. So with this whole idea, and I'm very interested because I'm certain at my institution, we're also missing round about 80% or more of calls. So have you all done studies to see or show, is that generation and potentially alpha maybe thinking that they do prefer it? Because, I mean, after the demo this morning, I mean, it's a bit more personable and it's faster. It's not just wait, the same thing that you would find on a bank or whatever. So I'm open to the fact, but I'm also, is there that hesitancy? And even though the calls are being maybe answered, are they successful?
Yeah, I think in general we've seen the Gen Z and beyond, right? That's kind of their new normal, and it's kind of what they expect. It's not necessarily what we would desire, right? But what I would say is, how many times have you called in for support and had to repeat your whole story 4 times to 4 different people, right? And so there's different ways in which AI, from a fully agent experience to, and think about this, right? Wait till students come with their own agent, right? And then it's agent to agent, right? So that's might blow your mind a little bit.
Fine. On the bar later tonight.
But even as adult students, which is a huge demographic still, right? The adult degree completion students, even as they come back in, so when they have that human experience, that it's an AI assisted, informed experience, right? That increases the users, the end user satisfaction, so that you're not having, like I just told this last guy, I don't know why I'm getting transferred again.
I believe that what you're experiencing is what I've experienced. It's just that the technology was also dumb. It was like, I still know I'm working with with AI, and I want the human connection. The technology has gotten so much better, and there's this thing that is happening slowly. I don't know how many of you have used ChatGPT with personal questions, and you're becoming better at that. I just experienced over the weekend, I was visiting my parents in Costa Rica, 80-year-old parents, and just basically talking about medication with these dual voice agents, and they got it. So I'm not saying you're going to feel more comfortable ever. All I know is that many of us will make the leap and sacrifice it because it feels so normal, and there will be more data points of you trying it. But yes, I totally understand that it feels fake. It feels AI. See, I just want the human. And then how can I escalate and jump the AI to go to the human? It's a natural behavior that we have. My bet is that it will start getting smaller over time. And obviously, newer generations, as your data suggests, they're already there. Yeah. There a question back here?
Hi, this is moving a little bit, extrapolating based on what you said. So if AI is going to enable us to take the parts of our jobs where we do spend a lot of our time inputting data, etc., and now we are able to focus on the more human aspects. What I'm considering is how much of the country and around the world the 8-hour workday is known to be obsolete at this point, created by Henry Ford in the early 1900s. And most of us either are too burnt out to fill that day, it's unreasonable, or there isn't enough work to fill that day. So as we make more time through these tools, how do you hope that the country and world will approach work-life balance?
That's a good one, Matt. You take that one.
So I would love to see a day personally, right, where our evaluation of our contribution is based on what we're able to accomplish and not the amount of time that we spend doing it, right? Because, I mean, even in my day-to-day work, I would say, that AI has probably quadrupled my effectiveness and efficiency, right? Where I'm able to get a lot more done in the amount of time that I have. And people are going to respond to that differently. There are going to be people that say, okay, then I'm going to get 4 times as much done. And then there's got to be people that say, I want to work a quarter of the amount of hours, right? And still be able to contribute. I personally hope that people will find a middle ground and say, yes, we want to be more effective and efficient with the time that we have, but we also don't have to work 90 hours a week anymore. We need to be focused on our families and focused on relationships, right? And the things that actually bring value and joy to our lives. So I hope that that's the goal and that it doesn't the pendulum doesn't, continue to swing to just get more done.
Yeah. I hope so too. There is something really interesting as humans, and you can see history repeat itself. With introduction of technology like productivity and worksheets and telephones, we're becoming very productive, but we figure out that technology can also be for pleasure. So this whole movement called hedonic technology that emerges in the 90s allows me to grab a phone and spend 4 hours just browsing, I don't know, kids breaking their heads and skating or people dancing, right? So the answer is, I do not know, and I hope your forecast becomes reality. I think that we're gonna figure out a way to fill that and void with new activities that are sometimes strange to us today. But if someone told me 10 years ago that I would spend 10 hours in my phone looking at people dance, I'll be like, that's crazy. Literally, that's how I decompressed last night after a busy day. Is there another question?
Grant Wilson, Western Nebraska Community College. I'm quite confident that the 93% figure is low for my institution in terms of what we're not using for technology. But I also know that I'll miss 100% of the phone calls if I keep people off their jobs to make the transition. So can you just hit pause for a month so I can catch up and have people do the process mapping and things like that they need to incorporate E25 and all the rest of these tools?
Yeah, that's part of the digital fatigue, right? And this is so real. What I love for you to understand is, if we put pause, right? The world is not put on a pause. Our frontier labs, the ChatGPTs, the Claudes, the Googles, they are literally numbing us. I'm numb, personally, as a technologist, with the technology I have to dominate right now and the technology I need to understand tomorrow, because the speed in which it's coming, it's out of proportion. Pausing, retrospective look at what has happened is something that as a society we need to learn, and I think that's an important balance. And I don't know what's the right answer. To plug this quote, I like what you said, that AI can help us expose certain things and go faster. So I was wondering if we can close with, what do you think this means as we try to in pauses, jump into the technologies? And what I'm telling you is that with all our awesome opportunities and problems, AI could help us. But what does AI helping you make the wrong decision mean?
Yeah. So data governance and data management, right? It's a 4-letter word at most institutions. Nobody wants to do that work. But a lot of institutions and a lot of leaders want to skip that work and go right to the bright, shiny object.
Yeah.
But if you don't have good data management in place, and you don't have good data governance in place, and you're not actively trying to remediate, 20 years of bad data, it's garbage in, garbage out. And all AI is going to do is help you make mistakes faster and be more confident about it, right? And so you cannot skip the step of getting your house in order, right, before you can fully leverage this technology. And so, and one thing that I would add too to your question, and I think it kind of ties together, as you're planning these projects and as you're planning change management, budget and plan for backfill and front fill, right, in this work, because you cannot modernize and make the changes you need to and still do your day-to-day job all at the same time. Not only will one or both suffer, right, but you will burn out your employees, and the people that you need to be able to take this technology and run with it, they're not going to be there, right? And they're not going to be there to stay. And so we have to budget to supplement our staff during these times of modernization so that we can do it well. And I know that's easier said than done.
Everybody, thank you so much for the conversation. Matt and Tambellini, thank you so much for your work. We are between now and I believe lunch break.
Yep.
But again, just thank you, Matt, and thank you all for the conversation.
Awesome. Let's hear it for him.